Back on post-draft presented by Geico. What a luxury when one pick nets two talents. The Jacksonville Jaguars now tasked with striking the right balance for the two-way star in Travis Hunter. The Wonderkin GM, James Gladstone, taken to the phones on his first draft day in their big chair and swapping spots with Cleveland at a steep price, but ultimately landing Hunter in Duval. Back in studio with the guys to split this thing down the middle. We're going to go AFC first, get into the NFC, talking some winners and losers here. And hear me out. I love a playmaker. I know game starts inside out, but we're going to start outside in and talk playmakers here in the AFC. Your biggest AFC winner playmaker is who?
Ashton Genty. He's incredible. We've talked about him just the last segment in terms of what he's capable of doing. And you might say, and I heard someone on this set say it, named Joe Musso, well, he didn't play in a Power 4 program. He ran all over Oregon like he owned Oregon.
I believe I said he broke tackles in the Mountain West. I just want to be quoted properly.
Fair enough. I've been known to embellish. This case was no different.
He's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. We're looking to pull at the small strings that all of these prospects offer, and that was the one to pull.
And exactly. And as our buddy Rick Spielman used to say, you hate the kids until you draft them, and then you love them.
Then you love them.
So there's every reason to love Ashton Genty. Special at Boise State. He's going to be special at the next level with Brock Bowers and, of course, Geno Smith, the new quarterback.
Ran, give me a playmaker here on the AFC side.
For me, I'll go with the late pick in pick 22 and go with Marion Hampton, running back out of North Carolina. And you just see that fit. That feels like a Jim Harbaugh fit. A guy that's going to get downhill. He's going to attack those creases. And can we talk about how big and massive and strong that new Chargers offensive line is going to be? And you have the threat of Justin Herbert pulling the ball away on RPOs. And think about it, he's going to step into a J.K. Dobbins role, as J.K. Dobbins ran for 905 yards last year in 13 games. So you're going to get that same similar style runner, and I think he'll be just as productive.
It was Altz, the premium pick last year. This year, it's Hampton, thinking about the big hog mollies up front, the running game. It's so in the image of Coach Harbaugh and what he's trying to do. Year one, he takes them back to the playoffs. Year two, we'll see what sort of step forward they can take with those guys leading the way. Let's talk about offensive line here on the AFC side, because this was an offensive line class that, you know, presented opportunity early, mid-round, late. We turn our attention to you, your biggest winner.
Armand Membu Wilson.
Yes.
As Rand likes to call him my son, because I've been on the Armand Membu bandwagon for quite a while and been fighting off all the haters. And look, he goes to the Jets, and not necessarily a surprising pick. I was leaning maybe towards Tyler Warner at this point, but I think he makes a ton of sense because you get your right tackle. He's 6'3" at the combine. He grew to 6'4" at his pro day, so that's great news. He has 34-inch arms, so if you care about arm length, that's perfect. And he is only 20 years old. He is only going to get better. So I love the idea of him at right tackle, next to Elijah Vera-Tucker, their former first-round pick. Yeah. Next to Ola Pashinu, the left tackle position, last year's first-round pick. Joe Tippmann, their second-round pick at center. They are building an offensive line. They are helping out Justin Fields for now. We'll see what that looks like. He's on a 2-year deal, and we'll go from there.
You just send him Ran and I's best at Thanksgiving. That's all that we're asking, is that when the family gets back together, that you say hello for us.
Keep the receipts.
Your favorite offensive line selection, AFC side.
Before we go there, we thought Ryan was in the picture when they showed him getting drafted. We were waiting for Ryan to pop out.
He was waiting for the hug in the background.
Left me hanging.
But for me, I went Will Campbell. Okay. You know, tackle out of LSU to New England. It's just the right fit. We're talking about a solid, consistent player, and everyone wants to talk about the arm length or lack thereof, however you want to scale it. This young man is going to step in. He'll be a day one starter, and he'll be New England starter at left tackle for the next 10 years, hopefully. Yeah. But he has to, in my mind, having Mike Vrabel there, remind Vrabel of his former teammate in Matt Light. Similar build, similar arm length, has to remind him of that, and that's what probably made him comfortable with the pick.
Man, to put somebody in that sort of echelon, or to ask that of him, that's exactly what they need out of this pick. You're hoping that you're getting Drake Mays, the godfather to his future children. That's the type of thing you're trying to do here. Is, like you said, a decade worth of production, and it could start here on this day for Campbell. Getting to the defensive side of the ball, I'm still taken aback a bit by the fact that we got so many interior defensive linemen selected. We saw a couple edges, yes, a couple off-ball linebackers as well, but your favorite defensive line selection going to an AFC team, Ran?
Gotta go with my guy Malachi Starks, and I'm riding this train. Malachi Starks to me is what Membu is to Ryan. I love this guy, and I think he is an absolute perfect fit into the Baltimore defense. This just screams a Baltimore defense, a defensive pick and style of player. And you put him in a secondary with Kyle Hamilton. And now you can do some creative things. You can play a rock and roll safety. And what I mean by that is now you just have two safeties. And wherever the strength of the offense is, you just roll one down versus the other. And you don't have to make one just a strong, one is the free. And both of these guys have the ability to play nickel. Right, so Kyle Hamilton can be your big nickel in run situations, and then Malachi can be your nickel in some of your other sub versus 11 personnel teams. So I love the fit here, and I think he's going to step in another guy to be a day one starter.
So much of Baltimore's success defensively last year came when Hamilton found that niche once again, found that way to play the game like he only does. Now you have two willing tacklers back there in your final level of defense. I know that I presented it as up front, defensive line, but any defensive player, AFC, as we had here, that you're in love with the pick.
I'm going to say in the secondary as well. I'm going to go with Jahdae Barron out of Texas. Plays in the slot, can play outside, can play free safety, can play closer to the line of scrimmage. Ran the 4.39 at the combine, and he played that fast. He reminded me a lot of Brian Branch, coming out of Detroit a few years ago, but Brian ran in the 4.5s, and that's why he fell to the second round. So he's going to Denver. Now you have Patrick Surtain, you have Riley Moss, you have Jaquan McMillan playing in the slot, and there's going to be an opportunity for certainly Jahdae to get on the field in that secondary. I thought that maybe running back might be a landing spot here for the Denver Broncos. It's wild to say that this team, after drafting Bo Nix last year and getting Sean Payton and all the things George Payton has done as GM, this team has very few needs. So this isn't a luxury pick, but this is a guy that's going to have an opportunity to play right away, even though it wasn't necessarily the top of the needs board when you looked at Denver heading into this draft.
Wide receiver duos, so 2024. We're talking secondary duos in 2025 with some premium picks going to places that already have talents in those types of rooms. We're going to bring this to summation on the AFC side, a winner and a loser. Looking at an AFC team that's walking away from this thing feeling like they hit the nail on the head, Ryan.
Yeah, the Tennessee Titans. Yeah. They didn't mess that up. They took Cam Ward. He's the best quarterback in this draft, and by what ended up being 20-something picks, and I think most people would agree that was the range in which he was probably better than the next quarterback. And I think, and you know Cam well, this young man, in addition to all the physical tools, has an edge. And there's something to be said for the neck-up approach to playing the quarterback position in the NFL, because all the guys can make the throws. All the guys are 4'6", 4'7" guys. It's the matter of getting punched in the mouth and being able to get back up and make plays. And Cam has proven that at every level, and every year he has gotten better as a quarterback.
Your biggest winner?
For me, I got to go with the Cleveland Browns. I mean, to make that trade and you still get the 5th overall pick, right, and you get a player that you probably coveted and had pretty high on your board, but then you walk away with still 4 picks in the top 100 left. And that has to be a win. That has to be a win. Now you're sitting there in the second round, you have pick 33 and pick 36. That's an absolute win to me for Andrew Berry. Now, you still have to pick the right players, but you have the right picks to really fill out your roster.
How quickly can you exact change is only fueled by the draft picks that you have. You now have more, and you can change a little faster there in Cleveland. For every winner, there is, in fact, a loser. And our loser is staring us in the face because he was staring them in the face. And I know you both share the same loser because I got the answers to the test here. Why the Pittsburgh Steelers, Ryan?
Well, they have a huge need at quarterback. Shedeur felt like a natural fit. I had heard that the organization liked Shedeur enough to take him at the bottom of the first round. And even if you pass on Shedeur, I understand Kenneth Grant, the tackle out of Michigan, being in need and taking him, should he have been available, he was long gone. I had heard that Derek Harmon, the player they took, had some injury concerns for some other teams. So I have a lot of questions about how they got to this point. Again, I understand defensive tackle, just the player I do wonder about long-term health-wise, and also the looming question of who's going to play quarterback in 2025.
Maybe the most important question that we ask year by year of each of these teams in football. You had an answer. It's right there for you. What do you think may have been the impetus or the driving force in them not selecting Shedeur Sanders? They only know, but how do you read that move?
To me, it says that they have something, probably nod, nod, wink, wink, set up with Aaron Rodgers whenever he's ready. And they truly feel like that's going to happen. For me, I understand why you would take a defensive tackle to eventually replace Cam Hayward, because he's not going to play forever, and a young guy that he could pass the torch to. I totally understand that. But if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, the model of consistency and stability, you take a guy who's injured, who has an injury history, and depending on who you talk to, you don't know if this guy's going to make it to his second contract with the club, which does not feel like a Pittsburgh Steeler thing to me. And then you add in, you pass on the quarterback, whether it was Shador, whether it was Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck, whomever. And now you're going to still be faced with this question in the 2026 draft as to who the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback is going to be for the future.
And the other thing, the point that Ran made earlier, is that unlike the Browns, because this was my question, they don't have the draft capital going into next year to move up because they always end up picking picks 22, 30. So even if they were the Browns and had the extra first-round pick, that would allow them the opportunity to move up. But if they're picking in the middle to the bottom of the first round, they're not going to be able to target whoever the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks may be.
To quote our colleague, the 2-time Super Bowl champion, black and yellow, Bryant McFadden, what are we doing? That was the question posed. The answer, it still lingers. Gentlemen, great work as always. We got more coming here on CBS Sports HQ with night 1 of the draft behind us. Straight ahead, we turn our attention to the NFC teams having selected, but who made out the biggest winner? Find out next. Back in studio, Ryan Wilson, Ran Carthon, Joe Musso. The Hallis Trophy has a safe home there in Philadelphia, but got plenty of teams trying to knock them off that mantle at the top of the NFC. Going to take a look at our biggest winners and losers here in the NFC, starting with an offensive playmaker. Ryan, your favorite offensive playmaker heading to an NFC team?
My wide receiver 1, excuse me. Someone's on this desk is wide receiver 5, incredibly disrespectful, but Tedrow McMillan, as we look for the culprit here, headed to the Carolina Panthers to give Bryce Young some help, and they do need help at wide receiver. We talked perhaps Jalen Walker being an obvious choice here, the linebacker / edge rusher out of Georgia, the 8th overall pick, but they took Tet because, well, they have Adam Thielen and they have Xavier Legette and they have Jalen Coker, who was a fun story last year as an undrafted free agent. Tet McMillan gives them an immediate jump ball, high point, contested catch machine down the field. Does he regularly separate? No, but that's not his game. And Bryce Young is one of the best anticipation throwers among the young quarterbacks. Yeah. Played really well down the stretch, and I think they are turning the corner with Dave Canales, and I love the fit there. They need help on defense, sure, but I think they couldn't pass up Tet McMillan there at number 8.
You got Legette going 6'3". You got Tet now going 6'4", butting his head on 6'5". There's some big targets there for Bryce Young to distribute that ball to. You're going wide receiver as well, but elsewhere.
Going wide receiver, going Matthew Golden to Green Bay. This just screams Matt LaFleur to me, right? And I think when Golden's name was called and they showed the draft room, I saw a little extra smile on LaFleur's face. This guy's the quintessential X wide receiver in that offensive system. And if you know that offensive system, they love to have the guy that's going to stretch the field vertically, where they can take shots for explosive, but also create some of that intermediate game that they like to throw and play in between those numbers. That was the role that that Christian Watson was supposed to fill, but he's suffered through injuries, and this is a plug-and-play X-receiver in that offense that's going to create those explosives for him.
And you think of some of the burners that have come out of this program, and it almost felt like a sigh of relief 30 years in the making for Packers fans who finally select a wide receiver in the 1st overall pick, albeit in front of that crowd there in Ashwaubenon. So there was some praise for this young man who, you made a great point, doesn't get to jump on the PJ anywhere. He's just staying right there in Green Bay. Robbed him of a private jet.
So unfortunate. He's literally going to walk 1 block from the stadium.
Facilities that way.
Facility, and probably to the Hilton Garden Inn that's up the street where he's going to stay.
Well, we're going to keep our eyes here on a couple Longhorns, because when we go to the offensive line, that's once again where your eyes go there. Number 9, Kelvin Banks.
I've always loved Kelvin Banks, and I love the way he plays his game, and he's a guy that I've consistently said he is the model of consistency. And going there, this is a New Orleans pick. They draft a year ahead of a need consistently, and Ryan Rapchek retired this week. They also announced this week that they're not picking up the 5th-year option of Trevor Penning. And this feels to me kind of like when they took Andres Pete 13th overall in 2015, where you have this lineman that there's no rush to put him out there on the field, but he could probably play guard for you this year as one of your best 5, which is what they did with Andres Pete. Now, guard ended up being the home for Andres Pete, but there were moments where he played some left and right tackle for him. But I do think that Kelvin Banks will eventually be their starting tackle.
He is a top 10 pick forever, going there at number 9 to the New Orleans Saints. Your favorite offensive line?
3 picks later, pick 12, the Dallas Cowboys. Do they need running back help? Sure. They instead decide to bolster the offensive line with Tyler Booker out of Alabama, one of my favorite offensive linemen in this draft class. I thought he had a chance to be a top 15 pick, even though he's a guard only, quotation marks. And for all the knocks we like to take against the Dallas Cowboys, they have made the offensive line a focus. They took Tyler Guyton in the first round. They took Tyler Smith in the first round several years ago. They have Cooper Beebe playing center now, who they drafted last year. And now you have Tyler Booker. So you're giving the offensive line and that offense with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb all the help they need up front. They signed Javonte Williams at running back. They can still circle back, get a running back in day 2 or day 3 if they want to. Incredibly deep running back class. But I think this is the perfect landing spot for Tyler Booker. And right around the range I thought he would come off. I know he didn't run the fast 40 time at the combine. I do not care, because I don't think they have plans to give him the ball, throw him the ball. Just they're going to ask him to block, and that's what he does extremely well.
I don't know if you guys noticed on the graphic, their last 3 first-round pick offensive linemen have all been named Tyler.
There's something there. We found something, the through line to it all, and it is big shoes to fill there on that offensive line with the retirement of Zach Martin. So they're going to be looking to plug some of those holes up front. A measured approach here by Jerry and the Dallas Cowboys going offensive line there. Let's go to defense. Any level, your favorite player? Obviously, we're going to be looking early in this draft.
Abdul Carter, 3rd overall to the New York Giants. It just feels like a layup. If not for Travis Hunter being in this draft class, Abdul Carter would have been the #1 player on my big board. He ended up being number 2. And he is just learning the position, Rand. He was playing off-ball linebacker until last year, wore the number 11, so reminded a lot of people of Micah Parsons. He's not quite there yet. He's still incredibly raw, but he doesn't have to be the guy in New York because they have Brian Burns, they have Kayvon Thibodeau, they have Dexter Lawrence. I think it's a best-case scenario for a young defensive edge rusher learning that position, coming into that system. I think he's going to eat early and often.
And for me, you got to go with the Atlanta Falcons and what they were able to do with getting Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. Now, was the compensation too much for the future? Yeah, probably. I don't know that I would have given up a future.
We'll see what that first is next year. That's going to determine whether or not this deal was done properly.
Correct. But if you're a Raheem Morris defense, you now have your edge guys coming off the edge that are going to give you that pressure and create those sacks that Atlanta's been missing. And this year they went out in free agency and you signed Leonard Floyd, and then you have Arnold Ebiketie, who is going into the final year of his rookie deal, and now you add 2 dynamic guys that can come off the edge. And then with Jalen Walker, you can kind of play him in multiple spots and move him around and create mismatches for him, lining him up over guards, or even playing him off the ball at off-the-ball linebacker. So love what the Falcons did there, getting these 2 dynamic young playmakers.
Yeah, doing 2 for 1 there, making up for lost time as they've continually gone offensive premium player position in the first round, whether it be Penix or London or Bijan or Pitts. This is a commitment back to the trenches there for Atlanta. Talking winners and losers, a holistic approach here in the NFC. Your biggest winner?
Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Okay.
So Emeka Egbuka, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about him as a potential first-round pick in the millions of mock drafts we did in the last 2 weeks.
Loved him.
You loved him, and you were right. Former wide receiver. Joe knows wide receivers. Ted McMillan aside. But in terms of Emeka Egbuka, in terms of the Ohio State lineage of wide receivers, Emeka Egbuka does not get the credit he deserves, I feel like. It's easy to talk about the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s and the Garrett Wilsons, the Chris Olaves, the Jackson Smith and Jigbas. Emeka Egbuka is in that conversation, and he is the most professional receiver, not only in this draft class, but perhaps in the last few draft classes, because he can play slot, play outside, fantastic route runner, and I think Baker Mayfield's going to love him.
And it's to the point of you saying the multiple positions that he can play. This is a Chris Godwin replacement. And Chris Godwin, he fractured or dislocated his ankle in week 7, I believe. And so they can now afford to bring him along slow because you have a player that can play that type of role in that offense. And if you talk to some people in Tampa, they will tell you that Chris Godwin is probably the most valuable receiver that they have because he can do a multitude of things, and he's a presence for them in the run game and sticking his face in there, blocking linebackers, being able to insert.
So maybe a future heir to that throne there. Mike Evans, each day a day older, but still giving you 1K plus. But that is quite a 3-headed monster at full health, a wide receiving core for Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. A big winner in the eyes of both of our experts. A big loser, you guys are on the same page here, but it does come a conditional loss, let's say. Your biggest loser, Ran?
Yeah, you put the Saints because we've heard that the Saints have been in love with Jackson Dart. So the thing is if you knew, if this is true, then you allowed the Giants to jump you when you had the ammunition to go from 40 to wherever, 25, 26, wherever to take him. And so you miss out on your quarterback. However, you can make a case for now you sit there at 40, you still have a Shedeur available to you at 40. What do you do? And if they can walk away from at 40 with a quarterback, most notably Shedeur, then we can flip that and call them a winner.
Yep. No, I completely agree. And the thing about Shedeur that'll be interesting, it felt like, to Rand's point, that the Saints were higher on Jackson Dart than Shedeur. But you love the idea of Shedeur having to play indoors, so you can't make the excuse about the arm strength outdoors in the AFC North, for example, in the wintertime in December. And also, Kellen Moore has a good track record with quarterbacks young and old, and you like that fit, given that they've now drafted Banks at tackle, and they have the playmakers, the wide receivers, starting with Chris Olave.
Ryan Rand, fantastic stuff. We appreciate the insight, but there's always more work to be done, and you're only as good as your next rep. We take a look ahead at day 2 of the NFL draft with some big names still out there as Shedeur Sanders slides to day 2. Possible landing spots. We'll break it down next.